Welcome to Real Talk on Islam Live, where we will bring in our panelists who in the first part of the show will discuss interesting theological topics from the perspective of Islam, and in the second part they will answer your questions. Our topic today is, when is Judgment Day? Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Welcome to Real Talk on Islam Live. This is our episode 4. Today we will be discussing the very interesting topic of when is Judgment Day. And I would like to introduce our panelist today who is joining us and talking with me in this on the conversation of Judgment Day. Panelist Imam Daniel Qureshi. He is a recent graduate of the Jamia Ahmadiyya School of Theology, serving the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, USA, Harrisburg area, and he's going to be joining me in discussing this very interesting topic. This episode and this show is sponsored by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community Outreach Department, USA. And we are a worldwide organization, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community worldwide, under the spiritual leadership of Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the 5th Khalifa of Islam of Ahmadiyyat. And the community was founded in 1889 by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, the promised Messiah, peace be on him. And he founded the community based on the precepts of peace and the true understanding of Islam, which we are slowly discussing different aspects from. So this show is basically from that perspective, the perspective of how Islam sees different the topics that we get into. So today, we obviously work off the platform of the Holy Quran. The two books that we will be discussing things from are written by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, peace be on him. The first one is The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. So that's and the second book that we will get into or work off from is The Essence of Islam, Volume 2, also the excerpts written from the books of the promised Messiah, peace be on him. So without further ado, we'll get into the topic of Judgment Day. When is Judgment Day? But I think Imam Daniel, before we even get into the idea of when Judgment Day is, we might have to define what Islam defines Judgment Day to be. I mean, it is one of the 6 articles of faith. So it's a distinguishing factor of those who reject the message of God versus those who accept the message of God. Like the verse in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 4, that says, those who believe in the unseen. So how does Islam define Judgment Day?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Just as you just now mentioned, it is a part of the 6 criteria necessary for one to truly be called a believer. So amongst these criteria, if one rejects even one of them, they cannot be considered a believer. So to believe in the Day of Judgment is a necessity for anyone who desires to be called as such.
And it's also one of the main 4 attributes of Allah, the master of the Day of Judgment in Surah Fatiha itself, the chapter 1 of the Holy Quran. So we are basically, the entire platform sits on those attributes, the attribute of the graciousness and merciful and the Lord of all the worlds and the master of the Day of Judgment. So it is one of the main ideas of the Quran that we work around. Explain to us the idea of what it is all about from the perspective of Islam, where no soul bears the cross of another soul or bears a burden of another soul. Can you kind of get into that?
Yes, so the belief behind Judgment Day is that one will be brought before God and he will be tried for his actions and only his actions. No one else's actions can have effect on another, and no one else can intercede on the behalf of another. In the Quran, in chapter 31, verse 34, it even says, O men, seek protection with your Lord, and fear the day when the father will not be of any avail to his son, nor will the son at all be of any avail to his father. So see, there's a bond between a father and son that some would imagine unbreakable. Yet God tells you that even on the day of judgment, that bond will have no power at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to understand. And familially, Allah gives us the relation of a father and son, coincidentally, to make us understand that even the closest relation of a father and son cannot have an effect on each other, or one will not bear the other one's burden. The verse Quran chapter 82, 18 to 20 says, what should make thee known what the day of judgment is? And it actually repeats the question, what should make thee known the day of judgment? That when a soul shall have no power to do aught for another soul. So it kind of fits perfectly with that concept. Well, when we think about Judgment Day, Imam Daniel, what about the idea of multiple judgment days? It seems like when you read the Quran and when you read the books of the promised Messiah and other hadiths, it seems like there might be the concept of multiple judgment days, like there would be a transition into a judgment day, which is the ultimate judgment day. In Islam, there's the idea of Alme Barzakh, a period between the first creation and resurrection. Can you kind of describe what that is?
Yeah, so just as you mentioned now, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the Prophet Messiah, peace be upon him, actually writes in his book, The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, that there are three states of existence. There is the physical state, which we are in right now. Then there's the second state known as Barzakh, and then there is the third state, which is resurrection. Barzakh can better be described as, in English, purgatory, for those that have an understanding of that word. So it is a state of an existence, as the Prophet Islam continues to write. Barzakh is the state of existence when the temporary human formation is dissolved and the soul and the body are separated from each other. So here, the soul and the physical body become separate, and the soul is taken into the second state of existence, whereas the body is left behind.
What does the Quran mean in Quran 101, chapter 101:7? It says scales are heavy. What does that mean? Is it talking about something? In this? Is it talking about this state of existence?
Yes. So in the state of existence, your actions from your first state of existence will take effect, and they will begin to affect your existence in that new state. So if your deeds were good, the effect of those deeds will take effect on you. And if your deeds were bad, then those bad effects will take effect.
So the physical body that we are in, what we did in our lives has an effect on this temporary state of existence, which we are describing as barzakh. And the idea of kind of sin comes to mind, that when we talk about sin, what we did in our lives, the things that are holding us back, the negative aspects of our life, the things that religious teachings tell us not to do, those things, it's not so esoteric. It's not something abstract. It's something that's actually going to have an effect on one of our states of existence. And namely, it would be this one, right?
Yes. So the fourth caliph of our community, Mirza Tahir Ahmad, actually gives a good metaphor for how one can imagine the second state of existence to be, and that is somewhat of an embryonic state. As the embryo in the womb develops over time based on the effects of how the nurturing mother affects it by what she consumes in her body, in the same way, those actions and deeds which one committed during their first state of existence will now come into effect and affect this second state as if it was an embryo. And those effects will work towards developing into the final product, and that will be on the day of resurrection.
Interesting. Is there an ultimate day of judgment, and what will happen on this day? What is the ultimate day of judgment?
So, the ultimate day of judgment can best be described as the finality of all things. The Prophet Islam actually writes about this in the philosophy of the teaching of Islam. Everyone will arrive at the climax of his recompense, meaning that on the day of judgment, all that which you had done in your prior existence will come out and you will be judged based on those actions, and you will be given a reward or punishment based on the good or the bad that you had decided to do.
Well, that kind of also coincides with the idea of what will happen when God, when you get to meet God on the ultimate day of judgment. And in Quran 64:10, it talks about the day of mutual loss and gain, and He will remove from the evil consequences of their deeds. So I'm thinking that if a God in Islam, the way that we've understood in the previous episode, we've also described, if He is able to cure us physically, so if He has the attribute of shifa, or He's al-shafi, He has the ability to cure a spiritual body as well. So it's not too difficult to comprehend the idea that in the state of the ultimate day of judgment, when Allah is removing the evil consequences, it's actually the power of shifa that is kind of at work in both instances, where the spiritual body is being healed by God Himself, and that is up to Him. That is His will that He projects to do this. So I think that is another area that we can kind of think about it in another way, how our spiritual body is being healed. And there's a wonderful hadith, Jami from Tirmizi. It says, whoever grants respite to an indigent or alleviates it for him, Allah will shade him on the day of judgment under His throne, a day in which there is no shade except His shade. It's an interesting, very beautiful idea to understand that the good works has also that nice effect in our temporary existence. Not just the bad things that are affecting us, but the good works are also affecting our existence and helping us to be more healthy from the perspective of our soul and our spiritual body, and when we're in that intermediate existence before the ultimate day of judgment. What does it feel like to be in the state of barzakh? Can you kind of describe if there is a way that the Quran describes it?
Yeah, so I think, as the Quran says in chapter 39, verse 43, Allah takes away the souls of human beings at the time of their death, and of those also that are not yet dead during their sleep. And then He retains those against which He has decreed death, and sends back the others till an appointed term. So here we get a good idea of how death can actually feel, in that it is like a sleep or a dream state. When we go to sleep, Allah Ta'ala says that He grabs our souls, He takes them, but then He returns them to us, just as He takes the souls of those who have died. In the realm of spirituality and the realm of physicality are parallel to each other. And in our normal lives, we can't cross over into that realm, but in the dreamlike state, oftentimes we have the ability to experience what that spiritual realm is like.
Almost as if the two existences, when we are sleeping and dreaming, and then when we are dead and in that temporary existence, almost as if the existence or the plane of existence is the same. It is just the will of Allah to bring back your soul at the point of sleeping, because that has a different aspect attached to it versus the aspect of death and waiting till the day of day of judgment. So it's also a good indication of how detailed Islam, or actually the Quran, really goes into explaining our condition, not in just in the hereafter, but how can we improve our condition in this very life? Because we also have these connections with this existence that we can utilize in this life as well. Now comes the point of when is the ultimate judgment day? And there's a beautiful illustration of a video on the question and answer of Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, the fourth Khalifa, may Allah have mercy on him, that we would like to play to kind of explain this aspect.
The time between now and then seems to be so large, so immense, that perhaps by human reckoning, it would not be possible for you to have a correct estimate of that time. But there are indications that the time is very, very far off. Because, for instance, in one place, the Holy Quran tells us that the people on the day of resurrection, when they will be brought up again, they will be talking between themselves, judging about the time it has lapsed, time they tarried on earth. And some would say, perhaps a day, and the others would say that less than a day, a part thereof. And still, their judgment would not be accurate, and only Allah tells us, He knows how much they tarried. Now, if you look back at the past events, the remoter they are, the smaller they appear to you, don't they? So, if the whole lifetime appears to be that small to them, they must have gone very, very far away from that lifetime. And the same phenomenon is true in space as in time. The farther a thing is from you, the smaller it appears. Look at the stars. There are some stars which are as big as the whole planetary system. Yet you can hardly see them with your naked eyes. So the same principle works in time. When you're too far away in terms of time, when you look back, the events appear to be very small and miniature size. So when they would look back at that time, they would think they tarried only for an hour or part thereof. That means it's very far off, a remote hour when they're talking about the past.
So basically, in essence, the time scales we're talking about are so large that it's not fathomable for us as human beings in our understanding in this physical world. And he kind of described it in a way where looking at a huge star that's probably the size of a solar system, but it's on the other side of the universe, and our naked eye is not able to see it. It's not even a glimmer. And that's the kind of time scale, the scales we're looking at when we're talking about how long it would be. But that's something that that's relative to the existence that God has created in that fashion. So Imam Daniel, in the Holy Quran, there are many instances where Allah states everything is being recorded from our perspective, our entire lives, our behavior, anything that our physical body has interacted with. What does this all mean, and will it all be revealed during the ultimate day of judgment?
Yes. So as you mentioned, in the Quran, it is mentioned many times of a record being kept. So one such instance is in chapter 69, verse 19, where it's written, on that day, you will be presented before God, and none of your secrets will remain hidden. In another reference is chapter 17, verse 14, where it said, and every man's works heavily fastened to his neck, and on the day of resurrection we shall bring out for him a book, which he will find wide open. So see, there is a record being kept of all of our actions. And on the day of judgment, Allah Ta'ala will bring those out, and He will reveal everything that we have done or said in our lives. No matter if we kept them hidden, no matter how hard we try to keep them hidden, they will be made known.
I mean, Quran 27:76 says, nothing hidden in heaven and earth, recorded in a clear book, and even gives the names of these book. The ones who do the wrong things, the book is called Sijjin. And the one who do the good things, the virtuous things, are called Ilian, from chapter 83:9 and 83:19. so it seems to me that and it's not just saying that nothing. It's like Adam's weight in the heavens from Quran 34:4. That means everything that has mass within the universe is a thing that is recorded, or some sort of a data point that is recorded. So if I think of a book, I think of data. I think something that is there. And it's interesting that even the scientists are trying to grapple with an idea similar to it, maybe not exactly the way that we're thinking about it from the perspective of Islam, but it's something called simulation theory. And we have a video that we're going to play from where a retired professor, Jim Gates, who studied simulation theory, is describing specific computer codes that he found within the equations of string theory that describe the structure of the universe. So we're going to play that video now.
Last 15 years trying to answer the kinds of questions that my colleagues here have been raising. And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web. And so I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether I live in the Matrix or not.
Wait, you're blowing my mind at this moment. So you're saying, are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct. So
wait, I have to just be silent for a minute here. So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos.
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code, you're saying it is computer code.
It's not even just is computer code, it's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations that occur in string theory and in general in systems that we say are supersymmetric.
And that's a very interesting area to go into. But so my point was that even the scientists are basically going into this area trying to figure out, what is this all about? Where will it end? And I think these verses about our recorded aspect of our lives is interesting, because it kind of shows that, yes, there is a master data keeper, and that is God that keeps all of that. And eventually, even these people who reject the concept of a judgment day will come to the same conclusion, that there is something that eventually will end on a very specific thing, and that specific thing will have the results or the consequences that religion is talking about, which is a judgment day. So when will we meet Allah on the day of judgment, Imam Daniel? Will we meet Allah in his full manifestation on the ultimate day of judgment?
So on this, I think there is a very good hadith that we can look at. And it was narrated by Aisha anha, Allah be pleased with her, who was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And she relates that he once said, "He who desires a meeting with Allah, Allah is pleased with meeting him. And he who dislikes meeting with Allah, Allah dislikes meeting him." She then asked the Messenger of Allah, "Does this mean the dislike of death? For if so, don't we all dislike death?" He answered that it did not mean that. What I meant was that a believer, when he is told of Allah's mercy, his pleasure, and his paradise, is pleased with the prospect of meeting Allah, and Allah is then pleased with meeting him. But a disbeliever, when he is told of the chastisement of Allah and his wrath, dislikes meeting with Allah, and Allah dislikes meeting with him. So from this, you can infer, you can see that the meeting with Allah is a definite, that one day we will be brought before Allah, Whether we believe in him or not, whether we want to or not, we will be brought before Allah, and Allah will determine our fate based on whether or not we desire to meet him or not. For those who desired it, they will be met with the graciousness of Allah, and for those who did not desire, they will be met with his wrath.
It's sort of like the words that we often repeat in surely we shall return back to him. And I think it's a reminder from the Quran that no matter what we do, no matter what kind of situation we face, hardships and things like that, or in the case of disbelief, like you said, it doesn't really matter. The source, we will come back to the Creator in all different scenarios. And to the idea of meeting Allah, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on him, the fourth Khalifa of Islam Ahmadiyya, kind of said that the pious ones live in the presence of God all the time, and their lives mimic that. And it's not something that cannot be palpable. You can understand the meaning of God if you firmly believe in the articles of faith, starting with obviously the Day of Judgment, and the other aspect of meeting with Allah on a regular basis are the revelations and the visions and the dreams, the true dreams that He has the ability to, and we touched upon some of this stuff in the previous episodes as well, true dreams that come to you and allow you to interact with your Creator in a sort of like a temporary way of that same existence that you eventually will go into, that we were talking about earlier. So at this point, I think we have don't have any questions. So in respect to everything that we discussed, Imam Daniel, what is the most important takeaway when we try to understand the Day of Judgment, whether it be the Barzakh or the ultimate Day of Judgment? What are we trying to get to? What is that we need to understand?
The most important takeaway from the idea behind the Day of Judgment is that those who believe in God, in all the aspects of Islam, fully and truly, they desire the meeting on the Day of Judgment. They desire to reach that point, so much so that they run towards it and they hope for it at every chance.
Even run towards death, like the Hadith was saying, they would meet their Lord. And I think the companions of the Holy Prophet, if you read the lives of the companions of the Holy Prophet and see what they did, they were running towards that because they knew the aspect as like the light of the day, or the, like the sun existed.
Yes, and then for those who don't believe, those who shun the belief in God in all the aspects of true religion, they fear it. To them, it is a punishment. To them, it is everything that they wish to push away from themselves during their lives.
I think that's a good way to properly take away what we discussed today. If we truly have the courage of our convictions and we live that way throughout our life, and like you said, we run towards death willingly because we're seeking that pleasure of the Creator, and eventually everyone will come to that conclusion anyways. So it's not something that is an if, it is when. The question is when it's going to happen. And rejoice in the meaning of Allah on the Day of Judgment. The when is incomprehensible to us. We cannot really think about the when. But that's not the important part. It is, we have to act like the pious ones of God. We need to live in the presence of Allah in our lives, and have it touched us on every instance. And it will so happen when we remain in His presence, of course. It cannot happen without, it cannot happen if we neglect the teachings that come with it by holding true all the articles of faith, not just the Day of Judgment. And even after our physical deaths, the relationship doesn't die with Allah. It keeps on going. And going back to Barzakh, the effects of the heavens and the effects of the hell will slowly begin to be expressed within the body as it gets closer and closer to the Day of Judgment. So in the case of the connection with God, it will get stronger and stronger over time, because what they did in this life, they kept that connection alive from the perspective of their creator, and they gave full importance to it. So until the Day of Judgment, when we will be given the full manifestation of God and his attributes, we have to keep trying, and we have to reach that level of effort that promised Messiah, peace be upon him, is telling us, and the prophets of God have been telling us to reach. And in that, I think we can conclude and say that if we do that, we will have a much better understanding of the Day of Judgment, and we will run towards it. So with that, I say thank you very much to our panelist, Imam Daniel, today for holding this conversation. And we enjoyed the back and forth and the new concepts of understanding for this topic. It was a very interesting topic. So thank you again. Jazakallah. May God be with you. Have a good day. Thank you for joining us today as we had an in-depth discussion on the topic of when is Judgment Day. We hope you enjoyed it. Please join us next on October 24th at the same time, where we discuss, is the world of the supernatural real? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel below for the notifications of future shows.